We all know that relationships between parents and children have their ups and downs. You're going to meet two very special people, Kristie and Cameron, and they're going to share their story about Cameron's coming out as a non-binary trans person. Oh, that's hot. Well, thank you, Kristie and Cameron, for stopping by into my kitchen. Welcome.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, the start of a new year, new beginnings, 2024. Yeah. Lots of things to talk about. Okay, I'll be frank. I went to the 50th anniversary gala for Rainbow Resource Center way back in the fall. Kristie, it seems like such a long time ago.
Yes.
And the video with you and your mom, it created so many different thoughts and conversations in my head. It touched me, but it made me realize how much we really need to learn and how much we need to do to move forward. And sorry to embarrass you, but you're kind of like the poster kid for this. And so I'm going to start with Cameron, if that's okay with you, Kristie.
Sounds great.
Cameron, you can share with us all now your story.
Where do I start? So I came out as non-binary a couple of years ago, but I mean, it started before that because I knew for a little bit before that, and I was still trying to figure out how to tell people, and that was terrifying. I am very fortunate to have parents that are accepting, but even still, it's not really a question of whether or not I am non-binary. It's a question of whether or not I wanted to tell people. Mm-hmm. And so, because once you open that door, you can't really close it back up. And as much as it's important to be who you are, and it helps make your life better, it also makes so many things so much more difficult. And I was definitely aware of that, because there's always going to be people out there who are going to say things and who are going to act a certain way once they know that. And I think I was very concerned about that and how the people around me would act. But I told my parents, and I told my family, I told my friends, and the reactions were overwhelmingly positive. I've been very fortunate to have a good support system and a lot of people who are here to help me. I've had my fair share of transphobia, but I'm lucky enough that it didn't come from my parents, and I'm lucky enough that it didn't come from my best friends. And I'm so fortunate that they were there to support me through everything. So I think that's just
that's yeah. So many questions. Was there a moment, or was there someone or something that gave you the strength to come out?
I think that my best friend Ellie did a lot for me. Because I came out as queer first, and I had a couple bad experiences with people not reacting the best. And I've told her this before, but she has no memory of this interaction. We were hanging out outside in the winter, and I just told her, hey, I'm queer. And she was like, that makes a lot of sense, because you don't really judge people. You see all people as people. That makes a lot of sense to me. I see that. And she just was just like, okay. And she was very supportive. And I think that really meant a lot. And just knowing that I had my best friend there, no matter what anyone else said, mm-hmm. it really meant a lot to me.
That's so amazing. On your friend's part too, the bad stuff, the people that really hurt you or said hurtful things, is it because probably number one, they don't understand. But sometimes I think they might be struggling with their own feelings of who they really are. Is there any truth into that?
I think that it really depends on the person. I think that there's some people who say things out of ignorance. Mm-hmm. They don't realize what they're saying is wrong. They don't really realize how it impacts you. And so those people, you do the best that you can to educate them, and that's where allies really come in. Other people who are there to support you and explain things, because being non-binary, being trans is hard, because anytime you're in any sort of situation where just anywhere, there's bound to be people around you who don't like who you are. And so it's stressful and it's exhausting and it's a lot. And so I do the best that I can mm-hmm. to explain to people, hey, that's not okay to say. Mm-hmm. But at the end of it, you're just tired. And so there's people like my parents, my brothers, my teachers, my friends that will say something on my behalf when mm-hmm. something happens. And I'm so grateful for them, because a lot of the people who say hateful things, they don't necessarily mean it that way. Not to say that there's not some people that do, and there's not people that are trying to hurt, because those people do exist. But I choose to believe that the vast majority just don't know.
No. And oh my God, when you say it's so hard, and I can feel like, well, even, when just meeting me for the first time or whatever, I mean, like the angst and everything, like I'm a visible minority, and there's been a lot of hurtful and racist remarks, but I mean, for non-binary and transgenders, it is a whole different ballgame. And first of all, you're one brave person, like, so such a good soul. So I must have, it comes naturally, Kristie. No, like, and you feel free now to jump in with your mom, but I'm gonna switch back and forth because I want to talk about social media and all of that, and we didn't grow up in that era, and I can't imagine now, like, people can just say words, and that's another thing, right? We can just type it out, there's no ramifications or anything like that, except for the person that they're throwing those words at. But Kristie, now, I mean, you're smiling. I mean, Cameron's said more than mm-hmm. once or twice the support from her from their family is like amazing, but a hard journey for you.
Yeah, we have been very lucky in a lot of ways. Lucky that we have, our family supports and mm-hmm. friends and people that we've surrounded ourselves with are like-minded. Mm-hmm. So that's been quite helpful. But I think the big key thing is as a parent, and I've said it before, but as a parent, we often think that we need to make our children into something. We need to push them in a direction. They need to become something that's our vision. Even their name. Mm-hmm. So Cameron chose to change their name. Well, at first, I'd say for the first hour, there was a piece of me that was a little bit upset. I thought, okay, but I like that other name. It meant something in the family. And I'm going through this. And then I stopped and I realized my real name is Kristen Pearson. And I go by Kristie. Well, if my mom had told me I had to be Kristen, that would have kind of been strange. Or I go by Pearson, not Pollard. I didn't take my husband's name. If he'd said, you have to have my name, again, it was my choice to choose my name. And mm-hmm. so for me, it kind of was an eye-opening moment that I thought, it's not really about me. It's not my name. It's their name. Mm-hmm. And so it should be a name that they like. And it's really not my journey, it's not my life, it's not my name, it's theirs.
And was that the first step for you?
That was a big part of the first step. I think that I was already beginning a path to try to be a better ally to all sorts of folks, folks that are in a more vulnerable positions. So I started trying to learn, because I think that's the key, that you have to listen and you have to learn from whatever that minority group happens to be. And I think if you really are listening and you really are learning, and that helps you with that journey. You have to lean in. You have to want to hear and want to understand another person's journey.
You're right. As a parent, like the backlash and all you want to do as a parent is to protect your child. Like in those early stages, in those early years, it must have been tough because you want to protect Cameron.
Yes. Your first thoughts as a parent is you are worried that your child will have things more difficultly, like things won't just kind of come. And so you know that challenge is there. So you're concerned, but I am, again, I'll say I'm very lucky with Cameron, because there's so many other things Cameron's wonderful, doing so well at with school and athletics and their heart and their kindness and other things that they've got that will help them along that journey in life. That's one space that will be a bit more of a challenge, but I think Cameron is pretty special in lots of other ways that it will pull them through, as long as they can have those supports from people around them. And I think that's the key for all people in any vulnerable space.
Yeah.
Do they have a circle of supports?
Yeah.
Some people that have their backs.
Yeah, so now, like you had mentioned, you have a circle of friends that are like-minded. What was it like telling the rest of the family? Like your aunts and your uncles, grandma, grandpa?
I think that it was very nerve-wracking. I didn't really want to tell most of them. I was lucky enough that my parents were willing to help me out with that. And so I wasn't the one that told most of them. A lot of, especially my dad's family, I was a little bit concerned about, because they tend to lean more conservative. My dad did a lot of the telling for me. And so I was very, very fortunate that I didn't have to stress about that. I still did, but it was a lot less stressful than if I had to tell every single one of them myself.
Yeah.
And I think that for the most part, most of them were pretty supportive.
Yeah. Good. And those that don't accept, you just...
Well, I guess I tend to believe things similar to what Cameron said before, that I don't believe there's a very large population of people that are truly evil or bad. I believe that most people want to be better, especially if they recognize that they're bringing pain.
Yeah.
I think most people, it's easy to write something on the social media because you don't look at someone in the eye, and you don't love someone, and you don't hear that they've hurt you. And so I think as an ally, one thing we could do as parents is explain how important it was to us, how important it was to Cameron. And I think in general, most folks have been quite supportive, because we've kind of just brought them along to help educate a little bit. I think most people that have any hurtful statements are often not trying to hurt even. It's statements like, well, the pronouns they and them, it's very hard for me to use those because they're plural. Well, that kind of a statement in and of itself can be hurtful to that person you're talking to, because you're essentially saying, I'm not willing to make that effort for you. And so it's sometimes those hurtful statements aren't just outright direct hate speech, but something that just makes you feel uncomfortable.
Yeah. It's old school, sorry.
Yes, I'm sure you've been through it.
No, well, people just don't like change. The hardest incident or person or situation that you found yourself in And how did you get out of it, or how did you come out of it?
Well, I think there's a couple that I could pick, but the hardest thing I would say is when I'm just online on my phone trying to distress from the day, and I'm like scrolling through Instagram or something, and I see some sort of hateful thing. I truly don't think that whoever's making that post truly hates trans people. I think that they don't realize that there are trans and queer youth out there that when they make those posts and they say those things, they're actively making their lives more difficult because they are normalizing that sort of hate online and normalizing it in person. They're making the people that see those posts think that it's okay to say that. And so whenever I'm online, I try and remind myself of that, and I try and think back to like all the people that I've met in person that have been supportive. There's so many people that I've met that I was so nervous to tell that I was non-binary. I had one teacher in particular that I was very worried about telling because he was older. And I was like, oh, I don't know how this is gonna go. He taught one of my favorite classes, debate, and so I was
Just
like,
think it's your dad.
oh, he was like old enough to be my grandpa.
Oh.
Yeah, no, he was like in his 70s. But I told him, and he was like, okay, do you want me to explain anything to the class? Do you need me to do anything for you? And I was like, I'm okay, but thank you so much. And the next class, he said, because in debates there is a Speaker of the House, and in past years we've referred to the Speaker as Mr. or Madam, and he told the class, okay, we're going to start calling them Honorable Speaker instead because we don't want to misgender anyone, we don't want to make anyone feel uncomfortable. And then I did a debate tournament a little bit later. I had some issues with people misgendering me. I sent him an email, and I was like thinking, okay, he'll probably reply to this in like a couple days, so I was asking what I could do for future tournaments to avoid this. And he replied within 10 minutes and said, I will make an announcement to the tournament. This is when debate tournaments were still on Zoom because of pandemic stuff still. And he made an announcement on the Zoom call and said, okay, everyone, put your pronouns next to your name because we want to make sure that no one's being misgendered and no one's made uncomfortable. We want to make sure that this is a safe space for everyone. And I don't know, I think about that a lot because there's so many people that you assume the worst, but like that teacher is now still to this day one of my favorite teachers because he didn't just make sure I was comfortable in class, he made sure that I felt safe and comfortable in every sense. And so,
wow.
Yeah.
And then in a way too, he's educating the rest of them. And if you do that, you know, in the early stages, right, they won't grow up to be those that, you know, spewing the hateful things on social media and stuff like that. That's an amazing story.
Yeah.
I guess we can't mention him, but
He was a true ally.
Well, you know what? You hear stories like that and you go, wow. Okay, so for you, Kristie, did it break up friendships? Did it?
I'd say
awkwardness.
I'd say my life began to shift in parallel with Cameron's choice. You know, Cameron's life changes. Well, I guess they weren't changes, but it was more out there. So with everything Cameron was going through, my life shifted as well as I did more not-for-profit work in different spaces with other communities, whether it was Indigenous communities or women that were living on the streets, lived experience folks, different spaces. And I guess I draw some parallels quite frequently, and it's just about being a good ally. And when you hear about Cameron's debate teacher, how he stepped up, I think that's really what it's about, because we do see some people being negative, some people being very, very, maybe they're feeling fear and they're quite angry and they're marching anti-LGBTQ plus or anti what have you. But I think that often allies don't march, don't stand up, don't say anything, stay quiet, because sometimes those folks that are being loud and negative, they're a little scary. And so
Yeah.
we want to cower back and not say something. But I think what the Rainbow Resource Gala showed us, with 850 people in attendance, partying and dancing and having a fun time, is that there's a big majority of folks that want to be better allies. They just aren't necessarily stepping up completely.
Yeah.
And I've been using the term lean in a lot.
Yeah.
And I feel that often things that we're scared of, we lean back, or we avoid, or we maybe are fearful, so we get angry. We got to lean into some of those tough things, and you get so much more out of it.
Oh, and you know what too, is just not understanding.
Yes.
A very dear friend, Cynthia Fortledge, has that wonderful saying, acceptance without understanding.
Yes.
And it took me a little bit to wrap my head around it, but boy, we use it a lot and try to follow those rules. But so my tea's getting cold, and so I think I need a little bit more hot water. But we're gonna talk more about this. And wow, I want to meet your teacher.
Thanks, Tracy.